Hi, it's Ware again from Ware, and I just thought I'd get in touch with you guys about autumn coming up in South Africa and Africa itself, especially if you're keeping bees, African killer bee as it's called, and pretty much wanted to cover a couple of quick steps that you need to look out for in terms of what's coming up and what you should be doing when it comes to the autumn period in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, technically, with the bees, pretty much most of the flowering's over right now, and I don't normally take any harvesting of honey, especially any honey that's in the brood. I leave that behind for the bees. But technically, if there's any honey left in the supers at this point in time, I'm most likely going to leave that for the bees as well. But check on it every sort of month to see if if the bees have consumed that honey. If you leave a super on the box, which is the honey box. And the reason being is that if that gets empty, then there's no point really keeping it on the hive. I'd rather remove it from the hive and store it safely, wrapped up in a black plastic bag or rubbish bag, so the wax moth can't get into it and ants can't get into it. After the fact that the bees have consumed any honey that's stored in there anyway, there's no point in actually leaving it on the hive. It's just going to create more space for the bees to have to look after. But any honey that's in a brood, that's definitely something that you should leave behind. It's also another thing that you should be looking at in terms of the steps to do with regards to keeping bees in the autumn period in the southern hemisphere, South Africa especially, is best to kind of move your bees out of any valleys that they might be sitting in, especially because the cold fronts will be coming through during the evenings now. If your bees are sitting in any trough or valley within the landscape, then it's best to move them out of there because that's going to be the coldest place, the coldest spot when there is a cold spell. So move them either into the middle of ground or to higher ground at least. And if you do need to do that, then just make sure that you also do fire breaker clearing as well. That's vitally important, especially now when things start getting drier in the autumn and winter season. If you are keeping bees in the felt and that sort of thing, it's best to make a fire breaker around that and clear the area from any debris and stuff like that. So if there is a fire that comes along, the chances of it actually taking hives are slim. And then secondly, I would make sure that you get hold of feeding trays, internal feeding trays that you can use, so you can feed sugar water during the week, especially cold fronts at the time when cold fronts come along. And then if you don't want to use an internal feeder, then use an external entrance feeder, which we sell both of those at the shop. And it's easy to make a formula there of 1-to-1 sugar there, or 2-to-1 sugar during the feed of winter time, keep the bees sustained. But I wouldn't do it on a daily basis. I think the bees should be able to contend with the conditions themselves, and only rarely do I feed my bees more than say once every 2 weeks or so, unless there's a very small colony that needs and warrants the fact that I need to feed them regularly anyway during this period. Especially if you've just captured a colony or you've done a bee removal, usually that's a good time to feed anyway, but especially during the winter. So focus on that for winter. The two factors there, three factors. One is moving the bees away from a trough or a valley. Two is moving the bees, removing the super if it's empty at this point in time, but making sure that you leave honey in behind for the bees to consume. Three is getting some feeding frames and feeding external entrance feeders. And then another thing that I would do is that if possible, I mean, there are some crops that flower now. So the cosmos has just finished flowering in South Africa. What will come up in June, end of June and July, is going to be in the high veld area anyway, so the whole Transvaal and that sort of thing, Gauteng, Mpumalanga area, and Magaliesburg area is going to be the Aloe Daviana. And when that starts blooming, I mean, it's a phenomenal local indigenous protein source or pollen source as well as nectar source for the bees. The only problem is that they really get extremely aggressive on that. So if you are going to move the bees out to that, remember you're going to have potentially the Capensis issue moving in to a pollen and nectar-rich winter source. So your bees may come under attack or come under fire from Capensis in that sense. Secondly, your bees are going to become extremely aggressive over that period of time, so I would leave them alone for the entire period that the aloe daviana flowers. And then thirdly, you got to make sure that once they are finished, that if you move them away from the aloe, well, you're going to have to move them away from aloe daviana at some point. Whenever you do move them, check for capensis before you do that. And lastly, make sure that you have somewhere to put the bees where they can really work well and hard on the earliest crop that comes available in August, because they are going to be pumping on that the protein and the nectar from the aloe daviana. And usually what happens is that we use the aloe daviana to boost the honey production of the bees in so that they're ready for August and basically 1st of September for springtime. So you best have a location, a seriously decent location with either sunflowers or blue gums, citrus, what else? Pumpkin. You could do lychees are a bit later. Lemons would be a really good one, and lavender would be fantastic as well. Lavender, pretty much certain types of lavender flowers throughout the year. So make sure that you are looking at these things in terms of your autumn period. I wouldn't open up your hives too often either at this stage going forward, because as soon as it starts getting below 10 degrees, you're really going to sort of need to be fairly quick about opening up your boxes and having a full inspection. But otherwise, yeah, fantastic. Hopefully you got some value out of this. Make sure you do some pest control as well. You can use nippet for ants. Just make sure that you don't get it anywhere near the entrance of your hive, because the bees will get affected by it as well if they take it into the hive. So nip it at the front of the or around the foliage around your hive, on the floor, on the ground. But just make sure that when you're spraying it, that you're not getting it anywhere near the bees, and that there's going to be no wind drift of the spray of the nippet when you actually apply it. That could be completely detrimental to your bees, and not only to the bees, but also to the honey that gets inside the hive. All right, so all the best, and post any questions that you have for any other questions that you have for the autumn period in terms of beekeeping in the southern hemisphere, and especially South Africa and Africa. And best beekeeping to you all, and have a great one. Ciao.